Okay, Victoria, before we hop into your session, like always, I'm going to send you your oracle cards and then your crystal grid that I built you for your chakras. The notes that we talked about beforehand were wanting to know if we had any soul contracts or vows or karmic lessons that we needed to clear out. Is there anything else that you wanted to speak on specifically today or questions that you have?
Now that is I wanted to know because kind of I feel a little hindrance on my way, and I just
Mhm.
wanted to know if it's something in my present or there is something in the past that I need to take care of.
Cool. Okay. Well, we'll go over the notes that your higher self left me here. So we'll start there. Unless there's any like specific questions, just that in general, as far as, hey, is there anything I need to release or anything that might be hindering me moving forward? Cool.
Correct.
Okay. And they're in with the notes that she left me. Some of this is not necessarily going to be heavy, but it is things that kind of need to be cleared out. And so some of our previous sessions have been more like positivity train. And this isn't negative necessarily, but this is kind of what you asked for of what do I need to clear out? And so I can move forward. So I want to say that before we get into it. Okay. So when I went into your field, ooh, let me fix my camera really quick. When I went into your fields, I saw a snail, and I haven't seen a snail in a while. I was like, "Oh, hello, cutie!" And so, I was asking the snail why it was here, and the message that I received is sometimes you feel like healing or growth or expansion needs to take a certain amount of time in order to have a payoff, if that makes sense. Of like, okay, well, I have to kind of go through these like trials and tribulations. Or sometimes we'll do kind of like self-sabotaging behavior, which I've done that before, of like try to work through more than we need to actually work through, kind of like picking at things that don't necessarily need to be picked at anymore. So tell me if that resonates with you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Your higher self is kind of like, hey, we're a lot further than sometimes we were perceiving. Okay. And we're still thinking that we need to go to snail's face. The snail also said that you get to set the pace with what your belief systems are. So if you have this programming running that's saying like these things are going to take a long time, or I have to do X, Y, and Z to prove myself, then that will be your reality. Or if you say, hey, I'm growing at an accelerated pace and I'm learning the lessons that I need to learn, and I am looking at my trauma and PTSD, and I'm making forward movement every day, like that is going to get you to the places and spaces that you're meant to be a lot quicker just based off of your belief systems, because your higher self is like, hey, we're right on track. We're doing great. But it's again this kind of like programming running of like, if I don't kind of have this resistance against myself, then I'm not going to be able to get to where I'm going. And your higher self is sitting here and saying like, Victoria, we're already on the way there. Okay. So where is this kind of like self-imposed resistance coming from?
I do feel like I'm going at accelerated speed, and I think
Mm-hmm.
my concern is what I'm missing. You know, that there are some parts
Mm-hmm.
that need to be taken care of, but because I'm going at such speed, I
Yes.
will miss them, and they are essential, basically. You know, so I don't notice something that needs to be done. That's why probably I ask those questions, because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like there is change. What I'm believing is not any longer applicable,
Mm-hmm.
but because it's so many changes, it's so fast. I'm just like a little bit what I'm not seeing. Is it
Yes.
something that I will miss something essential and that will hinder my progress in the long run? And then it will be so difficult to go back because it will be so back behind, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that you're absolutely correct, because your trajectory has you shifted identities very quickly, like many different identities very fast in our time of working together. Like you're a completely different person now over the last couple months. So even though that's wonderful and we love that, it can be a little scary making those many shifts that quickly, because you don't have a lot of safety and security in the old ways of doing things, the old versions, right? So it's like, oh, we're just a new person every single day. Okay. And there's no like evidence to base anything on to move forward. You're kind of um creating your reality from a blank slate every day instead of behavioral patterns and triggers and trauma, right? Because it's easier to do it that way. Okay. So higher self is saying, why do we feel like we're missing things? What if you're not actually missing anything? And that's why you've been able to make so much forward movement so quickly, because you don't have the obstacles and challenges in your way that you did in the past. And now we've kind of like cleared out the heavier portions of those things. It's like almost giving the energy of like, I'm looking for something to prove to myself that I'm not where I need to be. And higher self's like, why are we doing that? because and I understand too is the overthinking, is the over analytical. It's saying like, okay, well, if I can just take care of things now, then I'll have an easier trek in the future. But higher self is like, why are we not just assuming that it can be easy now and easy in the future? Like, why are we assuming worst case scenario or like catastrophizing? Because like if you've been on this trek of, okay, it was not great over here. Like at all, okay, and then we're getting better and better and better and better, why do we think that there's going to be like a drop off?
Maybe because I don't feel like I have solid foundation. So I just want to make sure that I build a solid foundation kind of while moving forward, so I don't miss any loose bricks basically in that foundation that will come crumbling in one day. Yes. Sense of safety and security.
Yes, which is also representative of the snail, because snails live in a shell, and sometimes it can be seen as you coming out of the shell, or sometimes retracting into the shell, and your energy is kind of giving like retracting into the shell a little bit, right? A little bit nervous. So let me see what your higher self is saying here. Okay, so why do we not feel like we have a strong foundation now? Like what's missing? Because I know that you are still in between finding what we're going to do next in our career, but if you took the career out of it, because that's a 3D tangible thing. Okay, so let's take that out of it. Okay, so if we weren't concerned about the career, what else are we feeling like we don't have a strong foundation with?
I think I'm still experience, kind of basically practice and knowledge, because I'm learning so many different things and they're so exciting. They kind of feel so right. That I kind of want to be better at that, to feel like as an expert. Maybe because I have very high expectations of myself. So I wanted to be at the higher level, kind of whatever I do to bring more value to people in whatever I do. And that's what kind of I was asking about those kind of previous karmic lessons, because it doesn't feel current anymore. Like it's not something that I have right now, but it's still there. So that's why I wanted to figure out if there is something that is coming off generational or karmic, or something that is not in this present moment, but is still kind of weight, like a brick that I don't see that is holding me down.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things your higher self is saying, that you have the archetype, like the structuring of somebody who's always going to seek knowledge and wisdom. Like you're always going to try and grow and evolve. Like there's never a time where Victoria's just gonna be sitting on the couch not doing anything. Because you're very intentional, not only with yourself, but with other persons and wanting to help the collective and things of that nature. So sometimes we are creating the blocks within ourselves. And one of the blocks, and I don't even like to call them blocks, but one of the growth moments, okay, one of the growth moments that we're currently in is, because you have this archetype and this structuring, you will never get to a place where you say, I am the expert now. Because there is always something to learn and grow. Because when I first started, because I have a very similar archetype of like, I will always continue to try and be better at something, right? So when I first got into the Akashic Records, I was like, I am going to become an expert in this. I want to be the best. And that comes from like some overachieving stuff and like some trauma stuff. But outside of the trauma stuff, it's also just because I want to help myself and other people at the highest level that I possibly can, right? And that's the intentionality. But if we become the all-knowing expert at something, that's going to be so far removed from the archetypal structure that we have, because then we're gonna and then we're gonna be like, oh no, I don't have anything else to do up here. There's no room to grow and evolve. Okay, so if you hit that point within something, I don't think that you would even feel fulfilled at that point, because it's like I need something to continuously push me forward to like learn and grow, right? And
Mhm.
so your higher self is saying we need to kind of make a pivot of I am an expert at the level that I am at right now. Because there are always going to be people who you are so far, not above, but so far forward in consciousness levels that you're an expert to them. They're looking to you like, I need your help. I need your support. You have the tools and resources that I need. And when I made that shift in my business, it completely shifted everything with my self concept and my confidence of I'm exactly who I need to be for myself and for the persons who need my support. But being on that hamster wheel of like, I have to be an expert in order to validate myself, or for other people to validate me, or for me to feel like I can help people, that was just like a never ending confidence hit continuously, like over and over and over again. And I was using that punishment as fuel of, okay, well, if I talk down to myself and say, like, I'm not good enough, or I don't know enough, and all these different things, then that is going to push me forward to be better. When that doesn't even need to be there. Okay, like that is such like a false illusion that is just this ugly, nasty stuff that is just harming us, when you and I are going to continue to do it either way. Like we're like we have the natural fuel and desire to get better at things, and we would have that without the self-judgment and without the beratement. But the way that we've been taught and programmed as a society, or like as kids, is if you talk down to yourself, it gives you kind of like these barriers and obstacles in your way to overcome and
Mhm.
overachieve to prove to self. When higher self is like, y'all are going to be looking for this info and knowledge and wisdom anyway. Why are y'all doing this right now? Okay, like we need to change up tactics,
That
because
definitely changes perspectives. Thank you.
yeah, if you, and this is something that I'm still practicing too, of pouring into myself, like I'm amazing, I'm so intelligent, I'm so funny, I'm very charismatic, I'm very caring, I'm very intentional, I'm a seeker of knowledge and wisdom. Like that gives you so much life force energy. But when we are berating punishment wise and saying like it leaves us burnt out and exhausted and not wanting to do the things, and it makes it like a chore, right? Because that's kind of the energy that
Mhm.
you're giving right now of like, I want to learn all these things over here, but at the same time, like I kind of don't, because I'm kind of trapped in this vortex of beratement. Like it doesn't feel good to be doing this. It feels like pressure. It doesn't
Mhm.
feel fun. It feels like homework. It feels like I'm being micromanaged by myself. Okay. And nobody likes micromanagers. Okay. It's a controlling thing. And that's in, that's from like trauma and programming and things like that. But do you ever feel like you are micromanaging self?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
And that definitely using that as, uh, like you said, a fuel to go do things to get better because you're not good enough.
Hmm.
I have to kind of do it versus do it because it's fun, because it's interesting.
Yes. Yes. And the thing is, kind of like we were talking about in the group meeting yesterday, when you're doing things because it's fun and enjoyable, there's so many synchronicities that happen, and things happen like a lot quicker because you're in the flow, you're in the current, right, of life, But when we're having those self-judgments, self-impediments, punishment kind of energy, it's like you're having to hop over all of these like hurdles in order to
Mhm.
get what you want, right? Yes. Okay. So higher
Where is
self.
it coming from?
Oh, go ahead.
Where is it coming from?
I think that it's a combination of the archetype that you carry that you've always had, like through multitudes of incarnations of I know what it's like to live in societies, not just on Earth, but like other places. I know what it's like to live in societies where there's a lot of injustices and a lot of oppression and a lot of racism and a lot of poverty and just all of these like really negative things. And so you kind of like spoken a vow over self of I will do everything that I can to make shifts within myself, but then also make shifts within the collective. And we know knowledge is power. We know knowledge is everything. Okay. We know self-awareness is everything. We know that um, mitigating our energy and healing is everything. That is how we all shift together. Because to me, when I kind of look over your Akasha field, I can see that you've done this multiple times of like, hey, I'm going to figure out how to get myself to a place so that I can be a leader to others, like an example, like an authority figure, right? But when you couple that with the incarnation that you've experienced here, and you probably have in other incarnations as well of being oppressed, a lot of programming, a lot of trauma on multitudes of levels, it is just a matter of healing those filter lenses and those distortions, like getting those out of the way of like, this is a false illusion, this is a false matrix, this is not the true self, this is not the true me. And that just kind of takes time to do. But if you don't go through that in an incarnation, then how are you going to help other people? And Victoria, right? So let's say you have all these different timelines, okay? Yes, they're all you, but they're different versions. They have all their different experiences, their different perspectives. So, yes, you have a lot of knowledge and wisdom about how to help people get out of these places and spaces, but you still have to kind of like go through it with the incarnation so that you can see through Victoria or Sam or David, whomever you've been, right? You have incarnated through specific lenses so that you can help people with specific things. So it's not necessarily that there's anything like that's what kind of your higher self is saying. There's nothing off track. Like this is just part of your soul and your soul plan of what you're traversing right now. So the real expansive move here would be for you to say, I'm exactly who I need to be in this moment. And I actually don't have obstacles. And I actually don't have challenges. I actually don't have bricks. I have been doing this for a very long time. And I really just need to take it day by day because part of my soul path and my soul mission was to experience what Victoria experienced so that she could help other people with these very specific things like the transitional phases that we talked about helping women or helping bring magic back onto the planet, all these different things. But when we are saying like, oh, there's something wrong with me, then you're going against the whole entire soul plan that you put into place in the first place. You're saying like, oh no, that matters. That's all a mistake. That was negative. There's something wrong. No, actually, everything's going exactly to plan right now, right? Because if you want to help women through transitional phases, like if that's what you vowed, right? That's what we want to be doing. Well, then you had to get a certain chapter in your life. Like if that's what you want to be helping with, okay, well then there's a whole bunch of chapters that you had to experience where we were not awake, we were not aware, and we had to get to this certain age in this certain chapter of our life to exit that matrix and now help other women with it. So it's like it's all going to plan. And so your higher self said the main thing here is just saying I'm not an expert. When if you've been doing that, how many incarnations do you have to do this, Victoria, for you to say I'm an expert?
I don't know.
That's what she's saying. Like how many incarnations is it going to take for you to say, hey, I know what I'm doing? Even though sometimes, because it's your human, it's a human Victoria that's like, oh, I don't have the certificates, I don't have all this stuff. And your higher self is saying, like, hey, We've gotten to a point in our ascension journey where we really need to look at ourselves in the etheric mirror and stop sinking so far down into Victoria and saying, like, I have been doing this for a very long time. I'm a healer. I came here with a very specific plan. I'm going to carry it out. I know Victoria, the human. I know that sometimes you get really stressed and anxious because we don't have like a specific plan that we're working on. But the bigger, grander plan is I know what I'm doing. I'm very talented and gifted. I've been doing this for a long time. And is it okay that my human freaks out sometimes? Sure. Okay. But there's no external validator, whether it's a job or a career or financial level or anything like that. You could reach all of that and it's going to feel very empty because there's these bigger facets of yourself that you're not believing is you. So even if you got all the money and the career and the house and all that stuff, all of that is going to feel empty until you say, like, I am an expert, period. That's really all your higher self is really trying to get you to get to right now. Because when you do that, when you say, like, oh, I'm an expert at the level that I am right now, not just in this incarnation, but all these other ones, then all that stuff that you're wanting, like a house and a career and money and all those things, now it has to match the vibration of you being an expert, and it's going to come in a million times faster. Because, like, of course I have these things. I'm an expert at what I do. I'm amazing at what I do. Of course people want advice from me. Of course they want to work for me. Of course they want to learn and grow and evolve. And then they want to pay you big money or give you opportunities and experiences because inside you're like, yes, I'm an expert. But you have to accept that here first, like, because you're trying to, and I get it, okay, because same, I've been you're trying to reach all these external goals, and your higher self was like, hey, you would save yourself a whole lot of time and energy if you would just accept you're an expert, and then we could send you this stuff a lot faster. Because we can't bring in what we're not a vibrational frequency match for.
That's what I feel. Yeah, definitely. And how do I find out more how to do it?
How to do what?
Change the frequency, like become more higher frequency. And that's what I think.
Yes. Okay.
Knowledge.
So a couple ways that you can do that is you got to start having conversations with human Victoria. Like I have conversations with human Sage all the time. Okay. And I'm like, hey, I understand that we're playing a 3D game right now. Okay. And you've been through a lot of trauma and things of that nature. But I need you to trust me more. I need you to understand that I am always going to be looking out for us and that even though you can't see the bigger plan, I'm the one that wrote it. Okay, so you got right. And if you knew how everything was going to happen and how everything was going to turn out, then that would be super boring. Why would we even be here in the first place? Because there's no fun in that. Okay, but it's a matter of self-regulation is not the right word because that feels like controlling, but self parenting, almost kind of like how you parent your inner children. But the multidimensional form of Victoria needs to parent Victoria that's here. Does that make sense? Because that's the level of consciousness that you're hitting now, which yay. Okay. Is when you can actually hop up into that higher form of yourself and talk back to yourself here on this human plane, because now you can just get directions and clarity from her very easily. So I know you're not a big meditator. So, and that's fine. Okay. So when I am doing activities that bring me a lot of joy and kind of get me in that flow state, whether it's going on a walk or it's painting or, whatever that is for you. Okay. That's why we talked about last session as well of like, hey, we need to figure out what those things are. and be more mindful and present in doing those things. Because when you do that, you're able to detach from your human a little bit, and like bills and stress and anxiety and career and all these things. And you're more in your higher self, in your multidimensional version. And when you consciously flip up into them and you say, okay, I'm going to be multidimensional me right now. You start talking back to yourself in the present. Like it's almost like you become future you, the higher awareness, and you give yourself steps and guidance and clarity and direction. I have conversations all the time where I'm very stressed out. Like I'm very anxious and very stressed out and controlling and all these different things. And I have to catch myself when I'm in that phase and say, hey, let's take a breath. Okay, because this is not going to help anybody for us to be this way. Take a breath. I need to switch up into higher me. I need to switch up into multidimensional me so I can have a talk to myself. When you do that consciously, because you're able to do that now because you've reached that level, you'll start to talk back to Victoria, like literally talk to her. Be like, hey, Victoria, tell me what's going on. Why are you stressed? Why are you upset? Why are you anxious? Why are we angry? Why are we frustrated? Why are you feeling lost? You can do it with your eyes closed. You can do it with your eyes open. We want to do it while we're kind of in that flow state, doing something that makes us happy. Okay. And you're going to start to have these conversations just like you would with your inner children. And it's going to make life so much easier to navigate because now you're stepping outside of yourself. You're stepping outside of Victoria and looking at her objectively without being so emotionally attached. And now we can say, like, hey, girl, I need you to just calm down. Okay. Like your feelings are valid. And I get it. It is difficult being a human because we never want to like dishonor them. We want to tell them, like, hey, I get it. Okay. But at the same time, we need to kind of look at this like a little bit more rationally because sometimes our human is catastrophizing and making up scenarios and putting more challenges there than they need to be. So it's really a matter of catching yourself when you're going down those spirals and taking a breath and saying, I need to speak to Victoria. Because then that automatically flips you up into the higher awareness. And when we flip up into that higher version of ourselves and we're talking to Victoria, just like I would be talking to Sage, we need to make sure that we are speaking to them as a higher self and not a trauma parent. So we don't need to be speaking to them like, oh my God, why are you freaking out? All these different things, right? We need to be coming with like unconditional love and say, like, I get it. I fully like we need to parent our human like you've been doing with your inner children. Does that make sense? So this is a great place for you to be. I'm so excited because it literally completely changes everything in your reality when you start doing this. And is it easy to catch yourself when you're doing this all the time? No, like there's some times where I'm still like way down in my human and freaking out. Okay. But when you do have those opportunities to catch yourself and say, I need to speak to my human, I need to speak to Victoria. Okay. It's a muscle that you build and it gets so much easier. So much easier. It's very easy for me to do that now because I can catch it. I can catch when my central nervous system I can catch when I'm having a trauma response, when I'm having a trigger response. And I say, oh, we need to talk about this. Okay. So what questions do you have about that? Or does that make sense the way I was explaining it?
Oh yeah, that definitely makes sense. It clicks so much.
Yes. And for you to be at this level, to be able to even do this, like very consciously, that is a representor that your higher self is like, hey, we're right on track. There's actually not impediments and things. Because there's some things that your 3D human are still working through with some things. We don't have to get into that. Okay. With some things. And that's not representative of you having blocks, though. That's also just representative of you having a human experience and you like learning lessons and you growing and evolving, but it doesn't mean that you're broken or anything's wrong. It just means that you're going through lessons so that you can help other people with things later on. Because there's some things in your life that you could probably let go of. Okay. But if you don't do that, then how are you going to help women let go of the things that they need to let go of? So like it's not that you're doing something wrong or you're broken. It's like, I need to go through this so I can be a leader and example to others, and I will let go of those things, and I am working on it, and there will be a day when I let go of those things fully. But I have to learn how to do that in order to help people do that. Because these women in like transitional phases, you know that they're going to have things in their life that you, when you talking to them and you're like, hey, you know, you're gonna have to let those things go. But that's not easy, especially for women who have maybe not been tapped into their multidimensionality for as long, or that don't have a good support system, or have not been given the tools and resources that they need. That's not easy. Like, I was in an abusive relationship for like 7 years, and a lot of people will be like, okay, well, why don't you just leave? It's not that easy. Okay. There's a lot of layers to things, and it takes time to heal and to have, you know, consciousness expansion. So you're just kind of going through like what you're going to help people with. But when you're punishing yourself and saying like, oh, well, I'm a bad person because I can't let go of these things. Well, that's just going to keep you there. Because, right? And so again, kind of this dichotomy between like, okay, well, if I have these things that I need to let go of and I haven't done it yet, well, then obviously that means I'm not an expert at healing. Your higher self is like, I really need you to look at yourself in a bigger lens and have more grace and compassion for your human. Like, she's the one that's going through all this stuff so that she can eventually help other people. So you need to be hyping her up a little bit better. Okay. And this is talking to your multidimensional form, okay? And your multidimensional form needs to be a little bit nicer to her. And stop trying to drag her and say, like, hey, I'm so happy that you chose to go through these lessons because it's part of our bigger soul mission and our soul map. And however long that you need to take with that, that's okay. But if you want some advice and some guidance and some direction and clarity, and you want to work through it faster, we can have some chats about it. But we need to also let her do what she needs to do to get to where she needs to be. So having more grace and compassion for self. Okay. But these are all things that I need to hear right now. My higher self's like, you listen to. Okay. So, okay. What comes up for you when I say that?
It's definitely clicks with the, I would say, like a higher self.
Mm-hmm.
Or something like, yeah, this is what that's what you kind of need to do, and I just did not have clarity to communicate that, and that's exactly what you need to hear, basically.
Yes. And every time that I talk to you, Victoria, in a session, I can see where your consciousness is raising, like, significantly. Like, you're understanding the concepts of what we're talking about very well. And so every time that we talk, it's a higher frequency. Like, every single time, it's a higher frequency. So, like, even this conversation, this is a very high frequency, esoteric, like, conversation, right? And so it's just going to continuously get more, like, more and more and more and more, right? And so that's where your higher self is like, hey, a lot of times when people are more at the beginning stages of the journey, they kind of do this like, kind of like oscillating thing where it's like, okay, we raise consciousness and then we kind of like go back down to 3D, and raise consciousness, like go back into the 3D. And like, that's beautiful. Like, we've all been there. You're kind of at this point now, we're just on this like upswing trajectory. And like, yes, there's these kind of like dips with your human where they kind of like go back a little bit, but instead of you looking like this, like you used to, okay, it's more like up, okay, down a little bit. Okay, now we're back up. Okay, just down a little bit. Okay. So she kind of wants you to see the overall picture that you're in a completely different reality and consciousness now. And the way for you to not have as much oscillation, even though the mini oscillations that you're having, is just to say like, hey, I'm an expert. I'm really great at what I do. I'm exactly where I need to be. Whatever my human's doing, that's fine. We're working through it. I love her unconditionally, and we're just gonna keep it moving. Like, that's really, that's all what she needs you to do. Right. And when you're human, or like when you are your human and you're down like really in the 3D, is your multidimensional self needs to take on more of an active role now in your life. She needs to be helping your human more, because your human has already gone through the lessons that she needs to go through, the heavy stuff.
How do I do that? That's what kind of I feel like they're knocking,
Yeah,
trying
you can feel it.
to
Okay.
do that.
Yes.
And I feel like I don't see that connection. Oh, I don't hear it. Oh, I kind of hear it. I don't know how to integrate it, maybe.
Okay. So the what we're talking about right now is when you're saying I'm hearing the knocking, that's human Victoria looking up to multidimensional self and saying like, what am I supposed to be doing? Okay. That's where you need to come in. When you hear that knocking, when you're like, I can hear her, but I don't know what she's saying. Okay. You have to trust in your ability to become her in that moment and say, I'm answering the call and I'm actually going to talk back to human Victoria. So you're thinking that there's this multidimensional form that you're working towards becoming, and your higher self is saying like, hey, you actually are at the consciousness level now where you can just become her and then talk back to Victoria. That's it. That like when and applicably, like tangibly, when you start feeling very like constricted and start getting into panic or fear or fight or flight, or you have some like trauma stuff or some trigger stuff come up, it takes practice to do this. But when you start feeling that, we have to take a second and say, okay, I need to take a breath. I need to switch into my multidimensional self so I can talk to Victoria. Just like you would with your inner children. You know, when your inner children are freaking out inside and you're like, oh, let's talk about what's going on. Now you have the ability to do that as a multidimensional self to Victoria in the current, which is also really representative of you healing a ton of stuff with your inner children. If you do not heal stuff with your inner children, your teens, it's very difficult to switch up into your multidimensional self. So your higher self is saying too, like, hey, you have done a ton of work to be able to do this. And don't overcomplicate it. When we are panicking or catastrophizing, we literally just need to say, I need to take a pause and a breath so that I can figure out what Victoria needs. It's almost like separating yourself from Victoria. It's very easy in a conversation. Like it would look like me saying like, hey, okay, Sage, I feel like you are not feeling safe right now. You're not feeling secure. We're having fears of the future or triggers coming up from the past. Can you tell me why you're upset? Just like you would with your inner children. And she will tell you. And she'll say, I'm feeling this because of this. And we can start doing some discovery work around there. Okay, well, what do you need from me? What can I do to help you feel safe? Or do you think this is coming from somewhere deeper, like from our inner children? What is it that triggered us? Why do you think that triggered us? Just doing like the self-discovery stuff that you do with your inner children, but you're just doing it with current you now. So you've done so much work that you don't have to do as much inner child work now, that you can start working on you present. And because now you're the higher self to your now form. Okay. So you've done it great to be able to get to that level. And like I said, don't overcomplicate. It's the exact same way that you would talk to your inner children. But we're just if you are calling up your inner children or your teens, then you're going to get that information. If you're calling information up from current you, then you will get that information. It's what lens are we looking through and who are we calling forward? So if you're freaking out in the current about something that's happening, let's say with your career, it's probably not going to serve you to talk to your inner children about it because it's something that's happening now. So a more current to our now existence. So that means that we need to go up a level to be able to talk to the one that's happening right now. It is going to be a huge, massive game changer.
Yeah, that's what kind of during our yesterday's meeting,
Yeah.
after we talk about inner children even 5 years from now, they were basically saying like we are on the same team. We are now helping current you, and I could not understand that. So basically they were kind of telling me that we need to work together on current kind of Victoria, maybe, versus
Yes.
keep going back and back and just focusing on that if there's anything I missed. So I think that's what kind of I was focusing so much instead
Mhm.
of trying to look at the current situation and kind of fix whatever needs to be fixed. And I kept going back.
Yeah, and sometimes it is beneficial to go back because there are like energetic cords of trauma and PTSD that are affecting us in the current. And then there's other times where like we've already healed that stuff. Or we've healed it to the level that we need to right now, so we don't need to be doing that.
Mhm.
And sometimes our inner children are our higher selves because they're like, hey, we just need you to have more fun. Like that would help you in the current more than anything. And that's kind of what your higher self was saying too, with you putting these self impediment blocks on yourself as a form of kind of like punishment or like I'm not enoughness, like trying to validate your worthiness. And higher self was saying we could just like show ourselves more love and grace and compassion and then say we're an expert and then hop up into this higher form and like just talk back to ourselves now. And like that's so much easier and more fun to do it that way. Your inner children are like fine right now. And I know that because there's no way you could get to this level where you could be multidimensional self you without because you had to teach yourself how to be a higher self to your inner children to be able to be a higher self to your human in the current. Okay, so we've done the work that we need to do. And
Oh,
is there going to be inner child stuff that comes up? Sure, just like what happened with me in California, and I just had all that trauma stuff just come out of nowhere. But it's different now because I'm just taking it day by day instead of digging for stuff because that does create blocks. Like there is chapters of our life where I'm like, yeah, you do need to dig in there. You do need to dig all that stuff up. But then there's other energy healers that have been doing that. And I'm like, actually, we need to stop doing that. Okay. Don't do that because you've already done it. It doesn't have to be slam in your face trauma stuff all the time. Like I know that's and I know that's what you're used to and accustomed to because those were the chapters you needed to be in. But what if we're out of those chapters now?
definitely.
Like we passed a grade.
Mhm.
Okay. Yes.
And
Okay.
again, the quick thing,
Mhm.
it clicked for me talking to my multidimensional self as I was talking to my inner children.
Mhm.
That is exactly what I needed to hear because I did not know how to connect. This is it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. You just talk to yourself in the present like you would your inner children. And that's literally all you need to do. Yeah. Okay. So a couple other things that came up. So and are you okay on time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I have plenty of time.
Perfect. Okay. So when I was reading your energy field after I was kind of talking to the snail about those things, I felt a lot of pressure in my heart chakra and in my stomach, like in my solar plexus, my sacral chakra, and I was like, "Oh, what is this?" And your higher self said that you have been bracing for impact. So kind of just going back to what we were talking about before of like, hey, let me see if there's any bricks that are out in misalignment so I don't get slammed in the face like later on. But your higher self is like,
Mhm.
what if there's not anything that you really need to brace yourself for impact like that? Because you're basing that off of some really heavy trauma stuff that happened to you in the past that you did have to brace yourself for, but your higher self's like, we don't have that stuff now. Like there is a point where you just lift up out of those vibrations and frequencies. You don't deal with that stuff anymore. Like I don't deal with that stuff anymore because I'm on a different consciousness level. I'm on a different frequency. Like I don't have that stuff in my reality. Like I don't have those type of people in my life at all. I do not experience the same things that I did previously. Like I live in a completely different world, but I got myself there, just like you are. But if you're continuing to brace for impact, then what do you think is going to happen? You're going to pull something in that makes you
I'm with
brace
you
for
there.
impact.
Yeah.
Right? Or we could just say, you know what? I've done a lot of work and I don't have to experience that stuff anymore.
I'll try that.
Yeah. Um, there's no way that you could experience those things though, because you're not that Victoria anymore. Like that Victoria pulled those things in because one, it was part of kind of like your soul mission, your soul path, but we're like on the tail end of that, like getting completely out of that so that we can just go help other people, right? But that Victoria pulled those persons in because that was a completely different Victoria than you are right now. Like there's absolutely no way you could pull those things in again because like you're not looking through those lenses anymore. Cool. Okay. So when I went, and this is going to be kind of like with your psychic abilities, what we're about to talk about. When I went deeper into your field, I saw this big giant eye that was looking at me, and I was like, "Is that a snake?" I was like, "Or a dragon?" I was like, "Oh no, it's a crocodile." Okay.
Oh.
So there's a big crocodile. You have a crocodile guardian, a spirit guide that sits in your third eye chakra. And so when I was speaking to her, she said, "I need to be on the lookout." And I said, "Well, what are we looking out for?" Okay. And this is kind of harping back to like brace for the impact, but this is having to do with more of like spiritual gifts and things. Um, so in shamanism, crocodiles are representative of having a good balance of being grounded and processing their emotions. And they are also representative of psychic insight and being able to perceive into different realms because their eyes sit above the water. So they have good eyesight, with spiritual eyesight. So when I went into the water with her, she started diving down very deep, and we kept on going down, 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 down. And then we kind of hit the bottom of this lake, and there was something that swam by me, and I was like, "What is that?" And it was like this big massive thing, and I asked if I could look through her eyes, like become her, to see what was going on, and she said yes. And so I was looking around, and there was this giant creature that was like circling me down there, and I was like, okay. And she was very scared. And so symbolically, what that's representative of, you unconsciously or consciously know that you're very gifted psychically, and that means that we have the propensity to help people with amazing things, to help them with, connecting to all these magical facets, like we talked about, like in our previous session. But that also means that there's a propensity to find some like really negative things. Okay. Like, yeah, you can perceive a lot of things. Okay. And there was some fear running of like, okay, well, if I am so powerful with these things, I'm going to draw big, powerful, negative things to me because I can see them. Okay. And so I was like, okay. The issue here, and not issue necessarily, but what this crocodile was needing to work with, I said, "You're thinking that you're this tiny little crocodile in these waters with these big old creatures." I said, first of all, I said, "You are a dinosaur." Okay, because crocodiles are like descendants of dinosaurs. Okay, you a dinosaur. I said, and you encoded into your DNA, you have the ability to shapeshift into a prehistoric crocodile dinosaur. Okay, I said you have that ability. I said, and we're also working in the ether, so the physics are not the same. I said you can just open and activate that. And she was like, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Watch this," because I was still kind of her at this moment. And she turned into this massive, 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 massive crocodile that was the same size as that scary creature that was down there. And I said, "Do you feel scared now?" And she was like, "No." She was like, "I could take on that creature if I wanted to." And I was like, Exactly." I said, you're kind of like shrinking into yourself, kind of like that snail energy that we are saying." I said, just because something, if you perceive something that's big and negative and scary, I said, you're very powerful. I said, that thing's not going to mess with you. I said, you're a sovereign being. I was like, you've been doing this for a long time. I said, you need to get out of this, "Oh, I'm just a small little baby. Like, I don't have any power," right? I was like, "Ma'am, you're a prehistoric dinosaur." Okay. But that's kind of representative of you, Victoria, of like not necessarily being a prehistoric dinosaur, not like saying like age, but you've just been doing it for a really long time. But sometimes you have these impediments on your psychic sight because we're worried that we're going to get a little too deep into the woo spiritual, and then we're going to see some stuff that's scary, and then we're not going to know how to handle it. Because the next thing that she said was, "What if I don't know when to switch sizes?" like to become really big. Like, what if she gets eaten before she has an opportunity to like expand? Okay. And so when I was looking at her energy field, I was like, you have really good boundaries up. I said, you have very good protective boundaries. Like she had these psychic walls that were kind of like these transparent things, but allowed her to, you know how bats have like sonar where they can like project out really far with their sound and they can like hit the cave walls. That's kind of what she has going on. It's kind of like different, but it's like so far outside of her. I was like, you have this really good perimeter set up. I said, you have to trust yourself more that you're going to be able to perceive those things before they get to you. And that you have the ability to change sizes anytime that you need or utilize the tools and resources that you have from all these different other incarnations. Like you're gonna be fine. Yeah, you've already set yourself up psychically very safely from what I was seeing with her protective barriers. Okay. She said that you could call her Lucy. Okay. If you want to speak with her in the ethers, her name is Lucy, or that's what she said you could go by. When I was talking to your higher self, she said that, okay, so you have the propensity to be a spirit animal channeler. So when I first started getting into channeling, it really was scary thinking about channeling other beings or deities or gods and things because I was just kind of like newer to that, even though I wasn't. Just like you, like we have, right? But my human was scared to do those things. And so I actually started with animals first because animals are not scary. Animals are very safe and they're 3D tangible animals. And even though you're connecting to them in the ethers, which is a little bit different than actually like connecting with the physical animal, it's a great way to learn how to channel in a way that your human feels safe with. It's like a little, let's dip our toes in here. Right? And so the way that I did that was I just started researching different spirit animals. Like, okay, what does a panda bear stand for? What does a crocodile stand for? What does a snail stand for? What does a monkey stand for? All these different things. And I realized in doing that, I've been working with animals for a long time, not just in this incarnation, for a very long time. And then I actually stopped having to research the actual animals like on Google, like, oh, what does the spirit animal mean? I could just channel that information from that animal itself and it would tell me exactly what I needed to hear for either myself or the person that I was working with. Like even now when I looked up snail, I've never researched snail shamanic and the snail told me what I needed to hear and what they stand for. Okay. So or like the crocodile, even like the crocodile was like, oh, this is how this applies to Victoria, right? So if you want some extra guidance and clarity and direction in life, animals are a great resource for that. And they're all different perspectives. So let's say that you have a question about finances or career or relationships or anything. Instead of asking your higher self, you could go in and say, like, okay, what kind of animal would help me with this? And wait for the animal to come in. Like you'll have an image pop up in your head or you'll get like an inclination of something. And then you can go on Google and just, what does a blue jay stand for? Okay. Or you can just search for different animals. Like, okay, let me look up a toucan and see what they stand for. And then ask them, like you would your higher self, like, what kind of advice do you have for me with this question? I think that would be a really great way for you to open back up a lot of your psychic insight. That's been a little not blocked necessarily, but just we haven't been feeling the safest with those things. So working with animals is a good bridge way over there because once you start doing that, you're like, oh yeah, there's nothing unsafe about this. And then you can start working with beings and deities and dragons and like all these things that are a little outside of what animals are and make you feel more comfortable. I just picked an animal every day to work with for like a while. I said, what am I going to look up today? I'll look up ants. What do ants stand for? Okay. So then I asked Lucy if there's anything else that she wanted to be show me. And she was like, yes. And so we started walking into your energy field a little bit deeper. And we came out to this kind of like field. Well, first I asked her if she wanted to ride on my shoulder, like shrink down and ride up here. She was like, yeah. So we were walking and we came out to this field and there was this giant castle, this huge, enormous castle. It was so beautiful. And I was like, oh, do you want to go in here? And she was like, yes. And she was like, but I want to walk. And I said, okay. So she got down on the ground and got like big again. Have you ever seen ducks like run and their feet are like slapping the ground? It was so funny because she was running like that and her feet were slapping the ground. It was very cute. And she was like, I don't know if we're supposed to be in the castle. She was like, I don't know if we're allowed to be in there. And I was like, okay. But and your higher self was like, no, you need to go in the castle. And but she was kind of worried, I think, of being seen, like some fears of being seen, even though it wasn't warranted, right? So I said, okay, and I snapped my finger and we were both invisible. I said, nobody can see us. Okay, so we started walking the castle and we were walking down this hall and there was this room and I opened the door and it had a whole bunch of relics in it, like antiques and things like that. And I walked over to this what do I put, a shield, kind of like you would see like kind of like in medieval times, like like a knight or whatever. And it had a swordfish on it. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Swordfish are seekers of truth in shamanism. And like cutting to the truth of things, cutting through illusions, either of self or others. And I was asking your higher self if this shield was from a different incarnation of yours or where exactly this was or like why they were showing me that. And they were excuse me, my words, they wouldn't tell me any more information. So sometimes I'm only meant to see certain aspects of something and then you're supposed to download that in later or it's meant to be revealed later. So for right now, your higher self said that when you can utilize this shield, like just pull it up in your consciousness with the swordfish on it, okay? Or you can ask Lucy to come with you. When you are around people or you are around relationships or career opportunities and you feel the energy is off, like something just doesn't feel right because our intuition is trying to tell us like, hey, something's off vibrationally here, you can pull that shield up to help you see through why the energy is off. Because I also think that you have some fears around people like misguiding or manipulating or like controlling you or being slick or maybe not saying things and maybe not always being deceptive with you, but not always being 100% truthful with you either. And sometimes that's not even the other person's fault. Sometimes like they don't even know their own truth. And sometimes they like you're reading things that are in their subconscious that they're not even privy to. Okay. But it creates a lot of dissonance within ourselves because we're like, okay, well, I know something's off. I don't know why. And then sometimes we get in trouble with that because we're like, okay, well, because I don't know why, I'll just move forward with this person or this opportunity or this thing because maybe that's just an intrusive thought. Maybe that's just me getting in my head and overthinking. And 9 times out of 10, that is not the case. 9 times out of 10, it is our intuition being like, girl, just trust me on this. Okay. And then we don't. And then we reap whatever we give from that. So your higher self is saying that in the meantime of you recounting where this shield came from in the first place, because I do think it's a different incarnation, utilize the shield to help you see through things. Cut through the truth. But then also with that swordfish coming up, that was another representative of your higher self of saying like, hey, it'd probably be smart for us to work with spirit animals for a while. Dipping our toes in. Okay. And also your higher self is saying, hey, sometimes we still have those thought patterns about people in our life, new people that are entering our life of, oh, do they have the best intentions for us? Are they trying to manipulate me? Are they trying to control me? Do they actually like me? All these kind of like things running. And your higher self is like, hey, that's a great opportunity to become the multidimensional self and talk to Victoria in the present and say, hey, is that warranted right now? Or are you doing that because we have past trauma? And sometimes it is warranted. Sometimes we do not need to be around certain people. But she's saying sometimes we're thinking those thoughts of people in our life that we do not need to think that about, or opportunities or experiences. Okay. So just becoming that higher self form and be like, hey, I know that you're feeling that way, and that's totally warranted because we have experienced trauma in the past, but let's take an account of if this is actually representative of this person or our reality right now. Just like I had to do with my inner children when they were having that freak out about my friend who I thought was mad at me. I was like, is that actually true? Or is that just because of things that happened in the past? And they're like, oh yeah, it's just because of things in the past. But I had to step up as that higher self form. Otherwise, that would have just started spiraling and it would have created an issue with my friend. And then it would have been a whole thing. Okay. Yes. Okay. So what questions do you have? That's the end of my notes that I have from your higher self. But what questions do you have about all of those things?
I will need to rewatch it.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it's
To
a
get
lot.
into a lot of information. But
Yes.
it is so amazing, and a lot of it kind of resonates. Like that is exactly what I knew
Mm-hmm.
somehow, but I just did not know how to interpret it. Because all of this kind of information, it's so different what I'm used to.
Yes.
And I realize it, like you said, that I know like I'm powerful. I do not, and I'm afraid that I will not use it always for the greatest good because I don't know how to use it properly
Mm-hmm.
and all of that stuff. And yes,
Which your higher self is saying that is also a self-limiting belief.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so we need to
And
check that too. Okay.
yeah,
That is
because
a
there's
great
so many different.
conversation. That's a great conversation for you to have with your human Victoria today of why do you think that we don't have the best intentions? Or why do you think we don't have tools and resources? Why do you think we don't know how to do this? That is an excellent conversation to have with her today. Because
Right. I don't
that's
doubt the
coming from her, not you,
intentions.
not hire you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't doubt the intentions. I kind of doubt if I will be able to use my powers properly, that it will not cause unintentional harm. Or there is something that I don't know how to handle because I don't have tools or resources.
Mhm.
Like you can try to bend something, but if you don't know how to do it, you can break it, basically. And that's I need to avoid that because that will affect me so much. Because I'm empath, I need to work on that too. Because I think that also hinders a lot because it's lingering feelings and it sabotages a lot of
Mhm.
progress, I think, because you kind of get stuck in certain thing and just spiraling
Yeah.
with
Well,
stuff.
your higher self wants to tell you too, there is absolutely zero way that you could prevent all situations from happening. There is going to be times where you say the wrong thing. Wrong. Okay. But you say the wrong thing, or you don't come from the most intentional space, or you don't use the right tool or resource, or you accidentally hurt somebody's feelings. Those things happen. But it's how we grow and evolve from that and say, okay, I see what I did, and I can make a change and I can make a pivot, and then I'll know better for next time. So we often have to be okay with being imperfectly human as well.
Mm.
Because if we're not, then we will just continue to be on that cycle of I'm not enough, or I'm not a big or enough of an expert. Like that's something I've had to come to terms with. Like, I'm not perfect, I'm never going to be. And I make mistakes, but I'm also a person who learns and grows and knows how to apologize and knows how to make amends. And I will continue to reach out for new tools and resources and new understandings. And we're just going to have to take it day by day. We're trying to prevent people from being hurt because we have been hurt. But we're not those people either. We're not going to hurt people like people have hurt us. Our hurting of people is completely different scale. It's like, oh, I might have used the wrong tone with somebody. Like it's not like gaslighting and manipulation and things like that, right? So we've just got to realize it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. We have to have more grace with our human. Okay. And tell her, like, hey, even if that happens, worst case scenario, we'll fix it. We can fix anything. Okay. Right. Okay. What was your biggest takeaway today?
To trust myself,
Hmm.
basically to trust that knowing kind of that
Mhm.
is there, and I'm just trying to find faults with it. Kind of like it cannot be true, you know, like it's too good
Yeah.
to be true.
Yeah.
And just kind of integrate it more slowly. So it doesn't, because I think a lot of those things just kind of a little bit scary because it's, yeah, it's totally different. And I embrace it. It's so much fun. It's so interesting. It's kind of so fantastic. But is it just kind of a dream? And then I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, you know,
Yeah.
I'm back to something that I don't want anymore, kind of, you know? That's
Yeah.
why I'm maybe being super vigilant that it doesn't happen, that I will not go back to what it was because it wasn't good.
I get that. Yeah, it just takes time and practice of like delving into these like higher ethereal facets of self, and just feeling stable and secure within that.
Mm-hmm.
Your higher self, before we finish up, did want to say that when you take more conscious effort, or not, let's not say effort, when you take more conscious direction in shifting into these higher facets of yourself, when your human is kind of freaking out a little bit, when you do that, it helps you connect to these other facets of self in different incarnations. Because now you're in a higher place within your Akasha fields and you start feeling more confident, empowered of like, oh yeah, this is me. Okay, well, if this is me and I do feel this and that I am an expert and I'm amazing at what I do, now I can actually perceive these different incarnations of myself and these different energy healers. Oh, wait a minute. I can actually just talk to them and channel from them and learn and grow and actually expand my knowledge and wisdom past whatever I would be able to learn as a human here. Because there's only so much time and energy you have. And I don't have time and energy to be reading through all these books and doing all this stuff, which is great if we want to do that. Or I could just switch up into my multidimensional self and find a different incarnation of me that could give me that information in a blink of an eye. But you can't do that unless you accept that that's you in the first place. Now we can actually perceive them. So that's the level you're going to next. Like first is we need to be inner children, and now we can be the multidimensional to our human, and now we can perceive in more of our Akasha fields and channel that down into this incarnation from these different timelines. So that's the next level. So once you teach yourself how to talk to you in the present, all that other information is going to start coming in.
Yes.
Because you resonate with being that person and you accept being that person. So now you can see what those versions of you see. Awesome. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and hit pause on the recordings because we're going to talk offline here.